The Art of War, written by Sun Wu of the state of Qi in the late spring and autumn period, is the oldest and most complete work on military science in China, covering tactics and strategy, and the deployment of troops. The Art of War is one of the earliest military books in the world, and is regarded as a classic of Chinese military science. Although it contains only 6,000 words, it is a concise explanation of the highest principles of warfare. Most of the later military books were influenced by it, and it has had a profound impact on the development of Chinese military science. It has also been translated into many languages and is an important work in the history of military affairs in the world. Napoleon, the French military genius, made Sun Tzu's The Art of War a must-have book to carry with him, and after the First World War, Wilhelm the Great of Germany also regretted not having read Sun Tzu's The Art of War earlier. The art of war is not only applicable to the military and political fields, but also has a strong guiding effect on social life, economic and diplomatic affairs, and interpersonal relations. The Art of War contains 13 chapters covering military strategy, tactics, command, and methods of warfare, summarizing the experience of warfare, presenting some famous and revolutionary military issues, and revealing some military laws of general significance. The first 6 are abstract theories and the last 7 are practical studies. The first 3 chapters, namely, planning, combat, and conspiracy and attack, deal with the general strategy in the preparation stage. The 4th to 6th chapters, form, situation, and void and reality, deal with the way of using the army. The 7th and 8th chapters, warfare and 9 changes, deal with the details of tactics and adaptable thinking in actual combat. The 9th to 11th chapters, marching, terrain, and 9 lands, deal with the study of terrain and the 12th and 13th chapters, fire attack and use of space, are about special operations and war thinking. Planning. The chapter on planning is about the purpose of war and the strategy of war. Sun Tzu believes that the purpose of war is to achieve victory, and that there are 5 types of war strategies: the way, the sky, the earth, the general, and the law. A general should fully understand these factors in order to develop a suitable tactic. The core concept of Sun Tzu's The Art of War is victory before battle, which means that one must first have the chance of victory before fighting a battle. If you reverse the order of the two, you will eventually fail in the long run. The way is the political foundation of the country, whether the monarch is of one mind with the people and the generals. To win a war, the prerequisite is that the people are willing to fight and to put their lives on the line for the sake of the country. Therefore, the first priority is to do a good job of propaganda policy for the people and ideological construction for the army. The heaven is the system of yin and yang, heat and cold, and time. For example, in winter, when horses have no forage and it is difficult to march, it is not suitable for an expedition. From a tactical point of view, the army can use the weather as a weapon, for example, the wind for fire attacks and rain for water attacks. Ancient stargazing, divination, etc., are monarchs, generals in the analysis of the sky after the face, used to propaganda, to convince the military and the people, so that the strategic tactical rationalization measures, and purely superstitious move. The earth is the terrain. Knowing the distance and proximity is the only way to plan the route of march. Knowing the dangers and ease, we can decide the number of troops. Knowing the breadth and narrowness is the only way to know where it is appropriate to spread the troops and where it is appropriate to hold the fortress in unison. This is the importance of knowing death and life. A good general must be familiar with the terrain and know where the environment is suitable for setting up camp. Marching through unpopulated territory, firefighting must be in favorable terrain, allowing the right troops to join the battlefield at the right time and the right place. A good deployment strategy can allow one army to perform as well as 10 armies. Generalship is the leadership of a general, and there are 5 important qualities that are indispensable. The first is wisdom, which refers to the leader's ability to understand his own limits, to think far ahead, to know how to evaluate the overall situation, and to know how to adapt in the battlefield. This is the basis for gaining the hearts and minds of the people. It is for this reason that the Qin government changed the law and established wood to gain trust. If you can do the military and the people can be used for you. The reason for this is that the military and the people can be used by you. A good general will love and cherish public property, love soldiers like sons. The Warring States General Wu Qi has personally helped soldiers suck foot pus, and that is why soldiers are willing to die for him. Brave refers to the ability to make prompt decisions, will not hesitate, lack of execution. Strict refers to the military discipline is strict. In ancient times, before a famous general went to war, he often beheaded his favorites beside the emperor who thought they had support but made no real contribution to the country, so as to tidy up the army and set a good example. The law is the science of army management, which includes organizational structure, command system, personnel system, material and financial management. After understanding these 5 fundamentals, we have to use them to calculate 7 things. First, does the monarch have the right way? The moral means that the people are united in their desire to share the fruits. Second, whose generals are more capable? Third, has the time and place been thoroughly studied to meet the needs of war? Fourth, are the laws effectively and strictly enforced? Fifth, are the soldiers of sufficient strength to fight? Sixth, are the soldiers trainable? Seventh, are the rewards and punishments clear, immediate, and appropriate? If, after analyzing the strength of the enemy in us, there is a chance of victory, only then can we decide to go to war. On the other hand, only when there is a chance of victory can we begin to discuss such ingenious schemes as the 36 schemes. At the end of the Book of Tactics, Sun Tzu lists the following 12 tricks. Show your opponent what you can do but can't, and show your opponent what you can do but don't, which means to play weak and let your opponent relax, so that whether you surprise your opponent or your opponent underestimates your strength and attacks you, you can easily win. The key to implementing this plan is to wait patiently for your opponent to make a mistake and not to do anything when you shouldn't. Once you move, you want to get it done once and for all, and one battle is worth 100. Therefore, a truly famous general will not win 100 battles, but will accumulate the strength to win one battle. To attack from afar, he pretends to be ready to attack from near. To break through from the front, he creates momentum on the side to attract attention. This was a strategic deception, aimed at getting the enemy to defend the wrong place. To tempt with profit and take advantage of chaos is to lure the enemy to relax through small profits and mislead their judgment of the situation, and then create chaos to take advantage of the situation. To prepare for the real and avoid the strong means that in the face of a powerful enemy, one must not act rashly, but must remain on guard and ready for battle. To deflect with anger is to provoke the opponent into forgetting the original plan due to anger. To be humble and proud is to pretend to be humble, so that the opponent will become lax because of pride, and then attack at the right time. To be anonymous and laborious is to constantly interfere with the enemy's army, to labor them physically and mentally so that they cannot rest, and to make it difficult for the enemy to determine whether they are harassing or preparing to launch a general attack, thus leading to mistakes. It is also a way to make it difficult for the enemy to judge whether they are disturbing or preparing to launch a general attack, thus leading to mistakes. Attacking the enemy where they are unprepared, and attacking them from an unexpected place. In order to execute the above 12 tricks effectively, the key is to keep them strictly secret and not to let them reach the enemy's ears. To sum up the Book of Schemes, the 5 things and 7 schemes were used to analyze the chances of victory and to ensure the chances of victory before deciding to go to war, further analyzing the situation and applying strange and clever schemes. Therefore, it is the fundamental of the art of war to strengthen one's strength and ensure a high chance of victory. 2. Warfare. The chapter on warfare explains the basic principles of warfare. Sun Tzu said that war should be fought without depleting the resources of the country, and that victory should be achieved quickly. He also pointed out 5 principles of warfare. If you know yourself and your enemy, you will win 100 battles. If you do not know yourself, you will win 1 battle and lose 1. If you do not know your enemy, you will lose 100 battles. The chapter on warfare is about the cost assessment of war and the know-how of cost reduction. Warfare requires chariots, horses, weapons, food, clothing, cooking utensils, transportation of supplies, repair and maintenance, and sending messengers. Effectively reducing costs is the essence of warfare. Sun Tzu believed that battles should not be fought for too long. When the state provides an army with 1 portion of food, the cost behind it is 20 portions of food, 12 of which are for the troops to eat on the way over and 7 of which are for the troops to eat when they return. When farmers and cattle were taken to transport the grain, the country would become poor. In the places where the army passed through, the price of goods naturally rose because of the increased demand for purchases, resulting in the people's money becoming more and more insufficient. As a result, if the war lasted too long, the country and the people would become bankrupt, the army would be undersupplied, the military would become exhausted, and the serious financial losses would lead to an increase in tax revenue and a lack of livelihood. The cost of war is so high that it takes a long time to slowly prepare and accumulate strength. Once war starts, the attack must be quick, the march must be quick, the expansion must be quick, the pursuit must be quick, and the victory must be quickly determined in order to minimize the cost. It is not beneficial for the country to keep fighting a war. In order to benefit from war, we must first understand the disadvantages of war. In all matters, we should consider failure first and put harm avoidance before profit. If you are a good soldier, you will only conscript your troops once, not halfway through the battle. When you find that you don't have enough soldiers to conscript them again, you will only carry food for 2 trips back and forth. If you want to get things done at once, reduce the number of conscriptions and food shipments to a minimum and save costs. You will be more efficient in warfare. To make the war quick, we must find ways to maximize the desire of each soldier to kill the enemy. There are 2 ways to do this. One is to arouse the anger of the army against the enemy, and the other is to give heavy rewards to soldiers who have achieved success in battle. If the enemy's chariots were captured, they were directly replaced with our flag and incorporated into our own armament. If the enemy surrendered, they were given sincere condolences and integrated into their own troops for their own use. The goal of war is not to kill 1,000 enemies and lose 800, but to achieve total victory. The best strategy is to make the enemy surrender and join us without fighting, so that we can become stronger while defeating the enemy. To conclude the book of warfare, Sun Tzu's way of warfare is to reduce costs through careful calculation, to do everything at once, to eat the enemy's food, to use the enemy's vehicles, to integrate the enemy's surrendered troops, to pursue minimum damage and maximum growth, to use anger and profit to stimulate the attack efficiency of the army, and to shorten the wartime as much as possible. 3. Strategy and attack. The strategy of attacking a city and an enemy is explained in the chapter on strategy and attacking an enemy. Sun Tzu believed that wisdom should be the main factor in attacking enemy camps and cities, and strength should be a supplement. The basic concept and purpose of defeating the enemy and capturing the enemy's city is called the strategy of attack, while the method of knowing oneself and one's enemy and predicting victory and defeat is called knowing victory. The goal of the attack is to seek the best, hoping that without fighting or attacking, the enemy will surrender and be incorporated into one's own forces without damage to either side, and that one will win without fighting. If it is necessary to launch an attack, it is necessary to win quickly and to fight soon. When the opponent's military advisors and strategists come to visit the enemy, they will be cut down and the enemy will lose their strategic plan, or they will understand that they have no chance to win and give up their plan to surrender. If the strategy fails, the enemy's diplomacy will be destroyed. Su Qin's confrontation of the Six Kingdoms against Qin, and Zhang Yi's alliance with Qin and the Six Kingdoms, made the Six Kingdoms unable to unite due to internal conflicts. If neither conspiracy nor diplomacy succeeded, then the next step was to consider attacking the army and the city. The reason why siege is the worst strategy is that digging tunnels, building bridges, transporting earth and filling trenches, erecting flying towers, ladders, and boarding houses all take a long time, which is contrary to the concept of quick war. If the generals were impatient and climbed the city intensively to attack, they would lose a lot of strength, and even if they won, they would only get a dilapidated city and army, which was against the principle of seeking the best. If you decide to attack the army, you should consider the difference between the enemy's strength and ours in the strategy of using the army. When our army is 10 times stronger than the enemy's, we can pack up and force them to surrender. If it is 5 times, then we can attack. If it is only 2 times, the advantage is not big enough, so it is better to spread the enemy's strength to increase the relative advantage of each battle and break them one by one. If you are evenly matched, you need to have a good strategy to increase your victory rate. If the army is smaller than the enemy's, you should not fight and try to escape. If you are inferior to your opponent as a whole, you should know how to admit defeat and run away as soon as possible. Don't insist on not running unnecessarily, and learn to give up the present moment so that you can have a chance to rise again in the future. The core concept is to divide the troops into 2 types, frontal and odd. The core concept is to divide the troops into 2 types. The first is to confront the enemy head-on and attract their attention, and the second is to surprise them to win. When the forces are evenly matched, the smaller forces are used to lure the enemy and the larger forces are used to set up an ambush. The key indicator of victory in the chapter of strategy and attack is to determine the key indicators that should be paid attention to and influence the victory and defeat after the battle. Sun Tzu believes that victory cannot be forced, but can be predicted, and he proposes 5 indicators for determining victory. 1. He who knows whether he can fight or not will win means that the general should have the ability to judge whether he can fight or not. Before the battle, it is difficult to judge whether he is sure to win, but it is easier to judge whether he is sure to lose, and if he is sure to lose, he will not go to war. When evaluating the victory rate, it is better to subtract 3 points from the judgment result to get a more objective victory rate. 2. The one who knows how to use the masses to win means that the general must be able to use his troops effectively regardless of whether they are large or small. This means that he should be proficient in managing and organizing troops of any size. 3. The one who wants the same thing from the top and the bottom will win, which corresponds to the way in the 5 plans and 7 things, which means that the army pursues the same goal from the top to the bottom. This phrase can also be interpreted as, he who shares the desires of others wins, which means that both the top and the bottom are willing to put themselves in each other's shoes and think in the same way. Han Fiza believes that even if the top and the bottom do not share the same desires, if a fair and transparent incentive mechanism can be designed to lead the army to rule the country in the same way as a modern enterprise, then the ruler does not have to be benevolent and the ministers do not have to be loyal to achieve good results. 4. He who prepares for the unprepared wins means to prepare for the rainy days and make thorough preparations. I am not afraid that the preparation will be in vain, but that I will be able to deal with the situation calmly when it happens. 5. The one who is able and the ruler is not in control means that when the general is able and the ruler does not interfere too much with the military affairs, the army will have a higher chance of victory. In order for the country to be strong, the general needs to be competent, well thought out, and well acted upon. If he does not know the ways of war, he should not force his troops to attack when it is not advisable to do so, or force them to retreat when they cannot retreat. If he does not know the affairs of the army, he should not take part in the management of military affairs and try to rule the army with benevolence and righteousness. If he does not know the changes in the power of the army, he should not take part in the appointment of the army and put those who do not have the ability to lead the army and only know how to talk about it on paper in positions of power. The monarch should respect the professionalism and trust the capable generals, and avoid trying to control and interfere with the army. To conclude the chapter of strategy and attack, in modern times, the cost of failure is low, so it is often said that when an opportunity arises, try it out, focus on how to succeed, and don't be afraid of failure. However, in ancient times, every step was a matter of national and human life, and the cost was extremely high. Therefore, it can be seen that Sun Tzu's thinking in the art of war was, first consider the chance of victory, then consider the loss when the chance of victory is available, and consider the benefit only when the loss is affordable. In war, one must know oneself and one's enemy, so as to know victory. You may not know the enemy completely, but if you can see yourself clearly, then you can also grasp half of the victory, and in the conspiracy of attack, the goal is to seek the whole, according to the priority order of attacking strategy, attacking friendship, attacking soldiers, and attacking cities. as well as striving for prudent warfare, quick warfare, and no warfare, which is the key idea of the conspiracy of attack. 4. Form. The chapter of shape discusses the analysis of the shape of the enemy in us. Sun Tzu proposed 9 forms of warfare, and considered that the appropriate form should be chosen according to the enemy, the terrain, and one's own strength. The shape chapter is about shape and how to judge shape victory. According to Sun Tzu, a man who is good at war will first make himself invincible, and then wait for the enemy to make a mistake. Whether or not he will be defeated depends on himself, and whether or not he can win depends on the enemy. If you cannot win at the moment, the most important action is to wait for your own form to become stronger, and then you cannot be defeated. Wait for your opponent to make a mistake, and then you will have the opportunity to win. To avoid strategic anxiety, never try to win first by taking a chance, and understand that an action is also an action. If, after observing the shape of the two sides, you feel that you are not strong enough to win at the moment, then defend. If you think you have more strength and your shape is better than your opponent's, then you will attack. A person who is good at defense is like hiding under the 9 earths. The enemy does not know how deep your strength is and cannot detect your form. A person who is good at attacking is like moving above the 9 heavens, sweeping the enemy like a typhoon passing by, not needing or feeling that he is competing with anyone. The so-called opponent is just a barricade knocked down by the tail of his wind, and is not at the same level at all. The enemy cannot defeat you because they have a long-standing difference in strength with you. To be able to lift a hair does not mean strength. To be able to see the sun and moon does not mean good eyesight. To be able to hear thunder does not mean good hearing. Those who are really good at fighting are able to see situations that others cannot see, and always defeat enemies that are easy to defeat, so people do not think they are good. The most powerful doctor eliminates the disease before it appears. The second most powerful doctor eliminates the disease when it has just sprouted and is not yet strong, and the least powerful doctor cures the patient when the disease is most serious. On the surface, the least powerful doctors appear to be the most powerful and are often called famous doctors. The most powerful doctors are less famous. Likewise, the most powerful generals are not famous, and good battles are usually not exciting. So it is said that the victories of a good warrior are not based on wisdom but on courage. This article finally comes back to the basics. Is your war justified? Is your military discipline strict? Analyze the amount of land, tax revenue, food, and resources of both sides. Who can support the war longer? If you compare them, you can see the odds of winning the base case. In conclusion, Sun Tzu is still repeating a very simple truth. The accumulation of fundamentals is the key, and when the strength is there, it is easier to produce a good shape. In a really good battle, there will not be a wonderful reverse victory, nor will there be a situation where you can win with 1 against 10, or a strange strategy. When a victor fights, it is like blowing up a lake on a 1,000-foot-high mountain. The water of the lake is hidden under the 9 earths and is unfathomable. Once it is blown up, the water rushes down and moves like it is above the 9 heavens, and no one can stop it. The military situation. The chapter of military situation discusses the offensive and combat aspects of military operations, and focuses on how to use and give full play to attacking energy. First look at the form, and then rely on the momentum. When we feel that we have won the battle, we have to think about how to create momentum to achieve momentum victory. By creating momentum, we mean creating a momentum through human action, and then using this momentum to drive the team to victory. To create momentum, the essence lies in management, tactics, and formation, which is the core content of momentum. In terms of management, you need to design a flexible organizational structure to effectively divide the troops, so that managing many people is like managing few people. For example, in ancient times, 5 men were used as an army, 20 men were used as a pawn, 5 pawns were used as a brigade, and 25 brigades were used as an army. Once the organizational structure was in place, the next step was to establish a chain of command so that it would be as easy to command a large army as it was to command a small detachment. The key to this was to allow information and orders to flow efficiently through the organization. Therefore, in a war, there are visual signals such as flags and smoke, or auditory signals such as horns and drums to ensure effective command. In terms of tactics, Sun Tzu's core tactic is to use righteousness to cooperate and surprise to win. Simply put, this is the strategy of dividing the troops. Those who are fighting are the frontal troops, and those who are left in the hands to fight later are the odd ones. Just like the three primary colors of red, green, and blue can be mixed to create any other color, the concept of positive and odd is simple, but mixed together can design an infinite variety of tactics. When you receive the ball, you are positive. When you are running without the ball, you are odd. Every second on the field is also a conversion of positive and odd. When the opportunity to win arises, the odd man out is immediately dispatched, shoots, and scores. Therefore, the one who makes good use of the positive and the strange wins. Of course, to be able to make good use of the positive and the strange, the prerequisite is that the soldiers should have the physical ability, the skills, the experience, the management of the organization, the command system, the leadership of the generals, and the ability of tactical planning. These all have the correct tactics. Execution is also high. Winning is like taking something out of a bag. The main reason for this is that it is a very good idea to have a good idea of what to do. The dangerous momentum refers to the accumulation of the accumulated momentum to the maximum, and the use of this momentum, just as the rapid water washes away the boulders. The shortest distance and shortest time for releasing the potential energy to ensure maximum damage. A good marksman does not rely on 100 paces to penetrate the yang. It is best to be well prepared, short and powerful when he strikes, and to draw the bow to its fullest to deliver a fatal blow right under the eyes of the prey. In the formation of troops, the goal is to make the troops look chaotic but contain order, disturbance but not chaos, and the team can cope freely on all sides without gaps. Only with strict governance could the enemy think that their troops were in chaos, only with bravery could they pretend to be timid, only with superior strength could they dare to show weakness to the enemy to lure them into invasion. If you are very strong, you will try to show a weak army shape to induce the enemy to misjudge the situation, and then use a strong army to deal with it. In conclusion, the essence of formation is to let the enemy see what you want him to see, and then mislead him, provided that you are strong enough. At the end of the chapter on the situation, Sun Tzu mentions that those who are good at warfare seek the situation, first to make yourself strong and confident, and then to let others feel your strength, so that anyone who sees you will have to yield to you. To analyze the enemy's psychological state and needs, and to find ways to disrupt the opponent's momentum and strengthen one's own, is to gain advantage. Those who are good at warfare know how to create momentum, can design a natural state, and put the right people in the right position. If they fail, they do not blame the people below them, because they have chosen the wrong person. To conclude the chapter of the power, how do you create power? Putting a boulder on a 1,000-foot mountain and letting it roll down by gravity, which no one can stop, is the basic method of creating momentum. Organizational structure, chain of command, surprise and victory, and military formation are all aimed at creating a good momentum to help you win. To create momentum means to send the right message to the right people, to put the right people in the right position, to use the right forces at the right time, to show the right shape to the enemy at the right time, and then to let it develop, and then you will naturally win. 6. Virtual substantial. The chapter of Xuexi discusses the tactics of Xuexi. Sun Tzu believes that one should make good use of the changes in reality and deficiency to lure the enemy deeper in order to achieve the purpose of attacking. The chapter on Xuexi is about avoiding the real and striking the imaginary, finding ways to use your real to hit the imaginary of the opponent. In a more detailed way, it can be divided into dominating the double square position, judging the opponent's square position, and concealing your own position. To dominate a double square means that when the strengths of two armies are equal, it is better to take control and turn the enemy's reality into a virtual one, creating a situation in which the enemy's reality is not real. Therefore, those who are good at war are able to predict when and where to fight earlier than the enemy, so that they can arrive at the battlefield earlier and wait for the enemy, build up their strength, and gain the advantage of the battlefield by taking advantage of the location. If the enemy attacks you, you will immediately counterattack his key points so that he has to retreat back to the defense. This is to attack where you can save. If you want to make the enemy tired, you have to make him repeatedly mobilize and wear down his morale. When the enemy's army was low on food, they pretended to negotiate peace, but actually stalled for time, so that the enemy would eat all the food and starve him, and then attack at once when the time came. It is only by judging the square situation that we know how to attack and how to defend. Therefore, we should analyze the enemy's plans, estimate the enemy's food, equipment, and numbers, and compare them with our own side, so that we can decide whether to wait or attack. You can use small firepower to attack the enemy and see how they react. You can deliberately show a weak form to lure them in and a strong form to force them to retreat. From the enemy's reaction, advance, and retreat, we can deduce his shape, know the importance of the territory he occupies, and then know his reality. After judging the reality, we will concentrate our forces on attacking the weaknesses, hitting the places he is too late to save, going in the direction he did not expect, and taking the path he did not defend. Once you see the opponent's gap, you will rush in, and retreat quickly when you win, so that the opponent cannot pursue. And to ensure that you can defend yourself, especially in areas where you think you will not be attacked. Those who are good at attacking can keep the enemy from knowing where to defend, those who are good at defending can keep the enemy from knowing where to attack. This is the importance of concealing one's position, the highest level of which is no form. Where the enemy thinks it is virtual, it is actually real, where the enemy thinks it is real, it turns out to be virtual. Sometimes you pretend to mislead the enemy, and sometimes you pretend to move and become real. The enemy is different, you fight in different ways, using infinite variations of tactics, there is no fixed routine, no one cannot see a reason. The enemy's strategy is strong, but he does not know where you will hit, he has more places to defend, and his troops are forced to spread out. You have no shape, the enemy will have to spread their forces to defend. If you know the enemy's deficiency, you can concentrate your forces on attacking his deficiency. If you concentrate your attacking forces on his scattered defensive forces, you are attacking the weak with the many and the weak with the real. He cannot see through you, but you know yourself and your enemy, so you can dominate the situation. Of course, everyone knows these principles, but not everyone knows how to do them. You can't really learn to apply it by just reading The Art of War and talking about it on paper. The only way to learn the way of the virtual reality is to go into battle, to be cautious and fearful, to know that you are not capable, to learn from experience, not to care about a single defeat, but to try to make the number of victories in the long run much greater than the number of defeats. To conclude the chapter of the virtual and the real, the use of military is like the flow of water, which has no constant form and no constant force. The water tends to be smooth, and the soldier strikes at the deficiency is advantageous. The topography determines how the water flows, and the shape and reality determine how the army is deployed. After judging the reality and deficiency, one must know how to convert the positive and the strange, to strike the real with the positive and strike the deficiency with the strange, in order to win by surprise. Therefore, only when the three chapters of shape, momentum, and void and reality are integrated can one be considered to really know how to use the military. Military controversy. The chapter of military controversy focuses on how generals should command their troops. According to Sun Tzu, a general should be strict and disciplined and good in rewarding and punishing his soldiers so that they will be convinced. There are 7 core ideas in the Book of Military Contention. To be straight by being circuitous. In the battlefield, due to the terrain and strategy, the fastest route for an army to pass between points is often not a straight line, but a circuitous route. Staying in the distance first will make the enemy think that you are far away, and then use small advantages to lure the enemy and make them relax. When the time comes, you can suddenly follow the best route to quickly insert the enemy, and then you can catch them off guard. The price of marching. Marching is the process of moving forward on foot with food and supplies in full armor, which is physically demanding and one of the key factors in the battle between the two armies. If you can do a good job of training, you will be able to improve your strengths in times of war. When the two armies are fighting for profit, the faster the troops move, the better. But to move fast, you have to give up some supplies, and if the supplies are too little, you can't afford to maintain the army. At the same time, if the army marches 100 miles without rest for the sake of profit, the army will be pulled apart and only the front 1/10 of the fitter ones will be able to arrive first, so when they fight with the enemy, they will be outnumbered. In different situations of competition, the decision-maker should know how to make trade-offs between material resources and marching speed in order not to cause too much damage. In the case of Zhao Shi of the state of Zhao, when he attacked Qin, he stopped his army at a distance of 50 miles from the enemy and set up camp, so that on the one hand, he could wait for those who had fallen behind to catch up, and on the other hand, he left the 50-mile road for the enemy, so that if the enemy attacked, he would be able to use up a lot of physical strength. Do not do things that you are not sure of. If you don't know the political intentions of other vassal states, you can't easily decide your diplomatic policy. If you do not know the terrain ahead, you cannot march effectively. If you do not have a guide or a detective, you will not be able to get a good position. We must know what we know and what we do not know, and act prudently and effectively in order to reduce the number of unexpected mistakes. Basic thinking on the battlefield. Although war is about winning first and fighting later, when it comes to actual battle, you still need to know how to use fraud. Just like in soccer, there are tactics and positioning, but at the necessary moment, you still need to know some fake moves and passing techniques to pass the opponent. When making decisions, you should always think about what is good for our army and act only when it is good for you, not to be influenced by other irrelevant factors. When using the army, know how to divide the troops and use the positive and strange changes to win. A good army is as swift as the wind in attack and retreat, as tidy as a forest when in formation, as fiery as fire when invading, as motionless as a mountain when defending, as unpredictable as a cloudy sky when calm, and as thunderous as a thunderbolt when moving. Plundering the countryside and dividing the masses, outlining the land and dividing the profits. To fight a war, you should know how to open some informal benefits to the army. For example, after capturing a city, soldiers were allowed to plunder money freely, and generals were given territory, so as to stimulate the army's will to fight with benefits. However, if the war today has a higher political purpose, which is to unify the world and win the hearts of the people, you cannot give such benefits to the army indiscriminately. Command system. In war, because we cannot hear each other, we use gongs and drums to give orders. Because it was difficult to see other people, flags were used during the day and fire drums were used at night to unify the ears and eyes of the soldiers. On the battlefield, it was required to act in unison, and the brave man could not advance alone, nor could the cowardly man retreat alone. The rule of temper, the rule of mind, the rule of strength, the rule of change. People who are good at war, must be good at the management of gas, heart, power, and change. First of all, the treatment of qi. When facing the enemy, if the opponent is very aggressive, you should know how to avoid it first and spend time with him, and then fight when the opponent's aggressiveness is reduced to the lowest level. You should always pay attention to maintain the sharpness, so that the battle can be fought. The second is the treatment of the heart, to keep the heart unrest, to face the chaos of the enemy's army with rigor, to face the impatience of the enemy's army with calmness, and not to make rash decisions due to pressure. In the face of an enemy general, you can try to disturb his determination, for example, by cutting off his strategist so that he can lose his right-hand man. When the general panics, his army will be scattered and we will be able to win. The third is the power of governance. Find a way to gain control, go to the battlefield first to refresh yourself, eat and sleep well, then you will naturally be strong and powerful in battle. This principle is the same as the to the people but not to the people in the book of the essence and the reality. Lastly, the rule of change, knowing how to adapt to the situation, fighting when you can, retreating when you can't, actually covers a lot of the principle of the rule of qi. If the enemy is on high ground, do not attack from above. If the enemy is coming down from a hill, do not reverse the attack, but lead him to the plain and then fight. If the enemy is pretending to be defeated, do not chase after him. If the enemy is putting out bait soldiers, do not attack. Do not stop the enemy's army that is retreating back to the country, because the enemy's heart is like an arrow. If you stop him, he will fight you. If you surround the enemy's army, leave a gap for him to leave, so that you can slowly destroy him while he is escaping. But if the enemy is surrounded and cornered, he will fight you to the death and cause significant damage. To conclude the military battle, not only do you need to have a big strategy and tactics, but you also need to pay attention to the details. Planning routes, marching, leading troops, motivating troops, commanding, managing morale, heart, strength, change, measuring the terrain, deceiving the enemy, preventing deception. These details are done well to succeed in the battlefield. 8. 9 changes. The 9 variations is about the variations and application of the tactics of warfare. Sun Tzu presents 9 variations and points out the importance of adapting the tactics of warfare. The core tenet of the 9 variations is that one should not stick to the rules in the battlefield, but know how to adapt to the situation. This chapter first discusses the basic concepts of terrain. Do not camp in wetlands, swamps, and other places that are difficult to move. Make good diplomacy at the border of the country. Do not stay long in dangerous places. Prepare strange plans for places that are dangerous on all sides and difficult to enter and exit to prevent enemy attacks, and fight with all your might when you encounter a deadly place, rather than wait for death. Although these terrain concepts of warfare seem to be very common sense, there are always special situations where common sense does not apply. When faced with special circumstances, there are roads that can be taken, but one chooses not to take them. The enemy can fight, but one does not fight. A city can be taken, but one does not attack. A territory can be fought for, but one does not fight. A sovereign's order does not fit the current situation, but one chooses not to accept it. When a wise man thinks about something, he has to consider the pros and cons in a comprehensive manner. When he considers the pros, he can think about all the disadvantages at the same time. When he considers the disadvantages, he can also try to find the advantageous side of it. Therefore, many things, a partial view seems to be in line with the principle, as a matter of course, but from the big picture is not. Knowing how to adapt to the situation and violate the law when necessary is the most important concept in the 9 changes. If you do not know how to adapt, you will not be able to gain advantage even if you know the terrain, and you will not be able to fully utilize the combat power of your army even if you know what is at stake. Here Sun Tzu adds the concept of trapping the enemy. Sun Tzu believes that the best way to trap an enemy is to find something to serve him, to entice him with benefits, and to make him do something to his own disadvantage. For example, sending beautiful women to make the opponent's ruler waste his state affairs, sending craftsmen to make the state spend money on repairs and gardens, resulting in less military expenses. Korea's sending of sailors to induce Qin to carry out water conservancy works, so that Qin could not afford to invade the East, was also a kind of labor. These concepts were known to the enemy, so he had to be vigilant to prevent himself from being set up in the same way, which is one of the factors to be considered in adaptive thinking. If a general is to be adaptable, there are certain traits that he must possess and others that he should avoid. First of all, a general must know how to be prepared for danger in times of peace, to prepare for rainy days, to be ready at all times, and not to take chances. There are 5 traits that a general should avoid: fear of death, greed for life and death, impatience and irritability, honesty but love of reputation, and too much love for the people. Because in the course of war, those who are not afraid of death are best to kill, those who are greedy for life and death are best to capture, those who are impatient and those who are clean and cherish reputation are easiest to manipulate with excitement, and those who love the people are most likely to be threatened by using the people as hostages. To conclude the 9 changes, there are many different situations in war, many ways to trap the enemy, and many qualities that can be used by the enemy. In order to improve your chances of victory on the battlefield, you must be calm and prudent in weighing the pros and cons, be prepared, and know how to adapt. 9. Marching. The chapter on marching explains the methods of marching in battle. According to Sun Tzu, one should choose a route according to the terrain and the enemy's situation to avoid falling into the enemy's trap. The first part deals with the strategy and judgment in the face of different natural terrains and enemy situations, and the second part deals with the quality and management of the army. The second part deals with the quality and management of the army. The chapter on marching presents 4 strategies for natural terrain, 6 types of dangerous terrain to avoid, and 32 rules for judging the symptoms of the enemy. These strategies and rules are not necessarily accurate, but only give an idea for reference. There are 4 types of natural terrain that Sun Tzu proposed to analyze, namely, mountain roads, waterways, salt marshes, and plains. In mountainous areas, one should march close to the valleys with water and grass, and camp on high ground in the sun. If you camp in a low valley with the sun at your back, on the one hand, you will be easily surrounded and disadvantaged by attacking on your back, and on the other hand, the soldiers will easily get sick in a humid place. When crossing a river by water, you should stay away from the river after crossing. If the enemy also crosses the river to attack, do not cling to the water's edge to form up, otherwise the opponent may become afraid to come. It is better to form up at a high place some distance away from the water, and wait until about half of the enemy's troops are on the shore, while the other half are still crossing the river, so that the opponent, with fewer troops and located at a lower place, is naturally in a weak position to fight. In salt marshes, the only way to get water is to be close to water and grass. The back is against the trees, so that the enemy is not on all sides, and the ground is more solid and safe. When fighting on the plains, it is better to lean to the right on the high ground because the ancient weapon design is mainly right-handed and it is easier to fight. To sum up, to any terrain, if you can be located in the high ground, the sun to avoid the tide, near the water and grass, backed by the mountain, the best for the army. On the contrary, if you are facing 6 kinds of dangerous terrains, such as Jian with deep water, Tianjing with high ground on all sides, Tianjian with 3 sides, Tianluo with deep grass, Tianjiao with low ground and muddy roads, and Tianjiao with 2 mountains facing each other and dangerous caves, it is right to avoid them. If you encounter a dangerous place, a swampy and low-lying area, a vine, a mountain forest, or a place with thick grass, you must search carefully because there may be an enemy army waiting in ambush. Sun Tzu went on to talk about the quality of the army. It is not important to have a large number of soldiers, but to have a balance of power, unity, and the ability to command them. The key to war is not just to be brave and adventurous, but to be able to focus on the enemy, to understand the enemy's situation, and to select the right people. If one does not have a deep plan and is light on the enemy, he will be captured by the enemy. These are the most basic concepts of the army. In the management of the army, if the general disciplines the troops before they are close to the general, the soldiers will not be able to fight because they do not obey the general. If the soldiers obeyed the general, but the general did not strictly enforce discipline, they could not be used in battle either. Only if the soldiers strictly obeyed the discipline, the soldiers could obey the command and coordinate in the battle. A good general will first unify the mind with gentle appeasement, and then unify the action with military discipline and law. To conclude the chapter of marching, different natural terrain has different strategies for warfare, and different enemies have different meanings, so when leading troops on the march, generals need to keep these experiences in mind and think carefully in order to avoid harm and improve the efficiency of warfare. In leading troops, you need to know how to order with literature, and bring together with martial arts, so that the soldiers will be used by you. 10. Terrain. The chapter on terrain discusses the effects of different terrains on warfare. Sun Tzu divided the terrain into 6 categories: pass, defile, break, danger, distance and proximity. He emphasized that generals should choose appropriate strategies and tactics according to the terrain. The topography focuses on the spatial structure and tactical significance of geography, including transportation, distance, obstacles, and ease of attack and defense. Taking these factors into consideration, the terrain can be divided into the following 6 categories. 1. Generalized terrain. Terrain where I can come and the enemy can come is generalized. The key to combat is to occupy the high ground towards the sun, and to ensure that the food routes are clear and secure. 2. Hanging shape. The terrain where it is difficult to turn back is the hanging shape. The key to combat is to see if the enemy is prepared, and if not, to attack. If the enemy is prepared, it will be difficult for us to return if we do not win the battle, and we will lose more. 3. Branch formation, the terrain in which the enemy and us are on opposite ends and the first attacker is disadvantaged is the branch formation. For example, if two armies are separated by a ravine, the army that crosses the ravine first will be easily ambushed by the other side. If two armies are separated by a river, the one who crosses the river will be easily attacked by the other side by half crossing. When faced with a branch, if the enemy army lures, do not pursue. It is better for us to lead the army away, and if the enemy comes to fight, wait for him to come out halfway and strike back immediately. If the enemy does not fight, forget it, there are plenty of other opportunities in the future. I'm afraid to take advantage of the weakness to fight. If you lose, the future will not have the opportunity. Analyze the advantages and disadvantages, learn to wait, learn not to fight, is the spirit of the art of war. 4. Defile, the terrain is wide on both sides and narrow in the middle, only one way can pass is defile. In the face of the defile, the first to fill the channel with troops has the advantage. Therefore, if our army arrives first, we must first hold the pass, fill the pass with troops, set up a good formation, and wait for the enemy to attack. If the enemy arrives earlier than our army and has already held the pass, then don't fight. In the case of Han Xin's battle against Zhao, the entrance to the city of Jerusalem was a defile, and it was because Zhao's army did not send troops to hold it that the subsequent battle at the back of the river occurred. 5. Dangerous shape, a dangerous terrain that is easy to defend and difficult to attack is a dangerous shape. If our army arrives first, we will occupy the high side of the danger and wait for the enemy's attack. If the enemy forces seize the dangerous terrain in advance and it is difficult to capture it, then retreat. If the enemy leaves the dangerous terrain and comes after us, we can try to counter-attack. If the enemy does not come after us, let them stay and we move back to our country directly. 6. Far shape, a terrain where the two armies are of equal strength and far apart is a far shape. In a distant terrain, it is not advisable to initiate a challenge because the challenger needs to walk a long distance. In the case of equal strength, the physical exertion of the army will be the key to victory or defeat. As a general, the most important responsibility before battle is to study these 6 types of terrain thoroughly. Sun Tzu believed that in a battle, it is more important to analyze each other's terrain to judge whether you are sure to lose than to have the confidence that you will win, and that is why he often told you not to fight when analyzing the 6 terrains. The most fearful thing in war is not to know that you are sure to lose, but to fight with the determination to win, which leads to a miserable defeat. A top general knows how to judge the enemy's intentions and study the terrain, so that he can win the battle. In the chapter on terrain, Sun Tzu gives 6 situations in which a general's failure leads to certain defeat as a warning. 1. To go, when both sides have equal conditions, but use 1/10 of their own strength to fight the enemy, 1 against 10, it is out of one's strength. 2. Slack, the soldiers are strong, but the general is weak and inactive, resulting in slack discipline. 3. Trapped, the general was very strong, but the soldiers could not keep up and were not well trained. 4. Collapse, the junior general disobeys the general and leads the troops to battle without permission when the enemy is encountered. 5. Chaos, the general did not manage the army in a systematic way, and the army was not in order and rampant. 6. North, the general can't judge the enemy's situation, and strike more with less, strike stronger with weaker, and don't know how to choose the elite as the vanguard. A good general knows how to use love and fear, grace and punishment to manage the army in a balanced way. The standard of love is to let superiors be like parents and treat soldiers as their own children, who can risk and die together. However, if the soldiers are treated well but not commanded, if they are coddled but not ordered, and if they are not governed by law and discipline, then they will be useless. Therefore, love should be paired with fear, together to be effective. The standard of fear is that superiors are more fearful than the enemy. In ancient times, it was the custom of the army to kill people to sacrifice the flag before going to war, and those who killed were the emperor's favorites. Knowing oneself and one's enemy, but not knowing the terrain, the chance of victory is still only half. If one knows oneself and one's enemy at the same time, and if one knows the sky and the earth, one will not be confused, and one will be able to understand all the changes, and the measures to deal with them will be infinite, and victory will be completely guaranteed. To conclude the chapter of terrain, different spatial structures have different ways of fighting. 11. The Nine Lands. The chapter of the Nine Lands considers the strategic nature and morale distribution of geography, including the depth of entry into the enemy's country, the relationship with the surrounding countries, and the psychological state of the enemy and us. The following are the 9 types of terrain and the corresponding battle strategies proposed in the Nine Lands. 1. Scattered land. If you fight in your own territory, it is called scattered land. When you are in a scattered area, the enemy is deep in our country and is determined to fight, while our army is too close to home and is easily scattered. Everyone wants to go home early and lacks the desire to fight. Therefore, being in a scattered area is suitable for defense but not for cooperation in war. If we really want to fight, we must first cure the morale and find ways to make everyone united. In historical wars, if you are located in a scattered area, a common tactic is to withdraw all the people and food into the city, hold the city and the key areas, try to exhaust the enemy until they retreat, and send light troops to block the opponent's food routes, then rely on the weather and terrain to surprise and attack them. 2. Light ground. The area where the enemy's territory is not deep is called light ground. When you are in the light ground, you are afraid of danger when you go deeper into the enemy's country, but you can go back to your own home when you go back. Therefore, it is not advisable to stay in the light ground, but to pass through it quickly, and to keep the troops densely connected, in order to prevent the enemy from attacking and to prevent the soldiers from escaping. It is better to select the best soldiers to form the vanguard and plunder the surrounding area to create some small victories to boost morale and embolden the army. This is also the method of managing morale in military contention. 3. When you encounter a contested area, you should move forward quickly and find a way to get to it before the enemy does. If the enemy occupies the contested area, do not attack it, but pretend to retreat and try to lure the enemy out of the contested area by using the method of attacking the enemy to save them, mentioned in the Book of Military Contention, and then take the opportunity to occupy it by force. If our army occupies the disputed land, in the face of the enemy's deception, we must know how to send the elite to hold the disputed land, and use the rest of the light troops to chase the enemy, and set up ambushes along the way during the chase. If the enemy returns to attack the disputed land, it will be easy to be attacked by the ambushers. If the enemy's army turns back to attack the disputed area, it will be easily attacked by ambushers. 4. In the case of the intersection, the army should not be blocked, but should be connected at the beginning and end to protect the food paths, so that the whole army can respond to each other and not let the enemy take advantage of the situation. If you can prepare in advance, you must strengthen your guard, build fortifications, and guard the main roads closely. If it is too late and you do not have an advantage in strength, you should divide your troops into ambushes, show weakness to the enemy, and then attack with ambush troops when the enemy is driving forward. 5. Kuti. The place where the 3 kingdoms meet is called Kuti. In Kuti, the first one to make a diplomatic alliance with a third country will be able to win 2 against 1. The spirit behind this strategy is the same as that of the Book of Conspiracy and Attack, which states that the upper army should attack and conspire, and the second should attack and communicate. 6. Heavy ground. The land that penetrates into the enemy's territory is called heavy ground. When you are in a heavy land, the food of your country cannot be transported, so the biggest goal is to solve the food problem on the spot. Therefore, the soldiers should be encouraged to plunder and turn over the food and goods they seized to the army, and the more they seized, the more rewards they would get. 7. Destroyed land. The areas that are difficult to pass, such as mountains, forests, dangerous obstacles, water nets, lakes and marshes, are called destroyed land. In the event of a ruined land, it is impossible to set up camp, so pass quickly, do not stay long, and pay attention to preserve physical strength. If the enemy intercepted at the mouth of the pass, first send a light car in front to meet the battle, and the rear team of the face around, the general observes in all directions, looking for gaps to break through, and then meet with the front in a suitable place. 8. Surrounded by the terrain, the road in is narrow, the road out is circuitous. The enemy can defeat our area with a small number of troops, called surrounded by the land. When you are trapped in a siege and the enemy has cut off the supply route, you need to use a strange strategy. First of all, we should show the enemy that we are determined to hold out, and we should cook our food for several days at a time, so that the enemy will think that we have run out of food when they cannot see the smoke. Then, we will show the enemy one by one the enemy's situation in the march, so that the enemy will think that we are dying. If the enemy is trapped in the siege, we should send troops to guard the main road and use light troops to challenge and test the enemy's strategy. 9. Deadlands, an area where there is no way out and where the whole army will be wiped out if you do not fight to the death is a deadland. When trapped in a dead zone, kill the cattle, burn the carts, fill the wells, flatten the stoves, eat a big meal, shave your head, and inspire everyone with a ritual to kill as many enemies as you can with a will to die. If the enemy is trapped in a deadly place, a way of life must be opened for them to run away. Once people have a way of life, their will to fight will be reduced and they will want to escape and survive. The ambush on the road to life, and the taking of one section of the road every time we run, will minimize the loss of our army. After the 9 lands, the rest of the book is devoted to what a good army should be, with the following 6 directions. Disrupting the enemy. A man who is good at using the army can disrupt the enemy so that the enemy's army cannot respond to each other, the main force and the smaller units cannot rely on each other, the officers and soldiers cannot help each other, the top and bottom cannot be accommodated, and the soldiers cannot be assembled, and even if they are assembled, they are not organized. If the enemy army is not in disorder and there are many of them, they will take their favorites, take the food routes and favorable terrain, and use them to disrupt. We must be quick in using our troops, taking routes the enemy does not expect and hitting places the enemy is not prepared for. If not, we should stay put. 3 armies in 1. Those who are good at using the army can make their troops act like snakes. When they strike the head, the tail will come to their rescue. When they strike the tail, the head will come to their rescue. When they strike the waist, both the head and the tail will come to their rescue. The troops are in the same boat, and they are each other's right hand. The method of tying up the horses and burying the wheels to prevent soldiers from escaping was not reliable. The main point is to manage the army so that both the strong and the weak can play their roles, and to use the terrain appropriately to create a momentum that cannot be disobeyed, so that the whole army can be united and the 3 armies can be commanded as easily and neatly as if they were one person. Morale management. The key to invading an enemy country is to manage morale. Our army is concentrated in a heavy place, while the enemy's army is scattered in a place with a scattered mind, so our army's will to fight is greater than that of the enemy. We fed our army through plundering, so that our soldiers could build up their strength and concentrate on their strength. We did not seek to win 100 battles, but to win 1 battle. Only by informing the soldiers of the benefits and not the dangers will the soldiers not be afraid to go in. In critical times, we should break the rules and give extra administrative orders and offer rewards beyond the legal limits to motivate brave men to come forward. The soldier's state of mind determines the will to fight, and the will to fight determines the strength to fight. The whole can be based on a simple principle: soldiers will resist if they are surrounded, fight bravely if they have no choice, and obey commands if they are in a critical situation. Therefore, when fighting a war, if we throw our troops into a place where there is no way out, prohibit superstition and eliminate doubt, we can unite our troops and make them have the will to die, so that they will know how to be on guard without being warned, how to work hard without being asked, how to unite without being restrained and encouraged, and how to obey discipline without being ordered. Only when the soldiers were put in danger could they really realize their potential, and each of them would become a warrior who dared to fight to the death and would not run away, because if they did not save money and fight to the death at this time, they would not be able to save their lives. This is the reason why Han Xin lined up his army against the water when he attacked Zhao. Good planning and strategizing. A good general is not always busy doing something, but is calm and unhurried. with enough time to think seriously and accumulate strength. A good general must be able to plan and act later, when before he fights, and lay out his strategy well. When fighting, he is able to follow the enemy's intentions, allowing them to gain momentum and tend to fall, and then concentrate on attacking when they are relaxed. When the enemy reveals a flaw, if you judge that it is not an illusion, you will quickly take advantage of the situation and catch your opponent off guard. The first to occupy the enemy's most painful strategic locations, not with the enemy to agree on a time and place to fight on time, but at any time to surprise, attack the unprepared, flexible to adjust the battle plan in response to changes in the enemy's situation, not rigidly adhere to the rules. Strictly secretive and unpredictable. A good general and army are good at secrecy, so that the soldiers only know the mission, not the overall intention of the battle. After deciding on the action of the war, they destroy all relevant records, and do not allow the enemy's emissaries to record them, to prevent military information from leaking. Actions and plans are constantly changing and updated, so that no one can recognize them. The location of the garrison changes frequently, and the army takes many detours, so that no one knows where they are going. The mission delivered will be like sending someone to climb a building, and when they have climbed it, they will pull the ladder off. The mission will be like sending a man up a building, and once he is on it, he will pull the ladder off, and with the intention of breaking the ladder, he can only go up but not back down. Commanding soldiers is like herding sheep, everyone trusts the leader and follows him with all his heart, but he does not know where he is going. The enemy cannot guess what you are planning, and your own people do not know what your strategy is. In the end, you put your army in danger and win, so that everyone comes back alive. The prerequisite for achieving these goals is that the general should be able to bend and stretch in the face of the changes in the 9 lands, and know how to rule the air, and use his strength and leadership to win the hearts and minds of the army so that they will follow the way of the king. As mentioned in the Book of Military Controversy, without knowing the political intentions of other vassal states, one cannot easily decide on the direction of diplomacy. If you do not know the terrain ahead, you cannot march on it. Without a guide and detecting soldiers, one cannot get the geographical position. Sun Tzu repeatedly emphasized in the 9 lands that knowing is knowing and not knowing is not knowing. If you don't know any of the above, you are not the army of the king. If you are able to conquer a great nation with the army of the king, the enemy will be too afraid of the army's power to fully mobilize and rally, and you will be so powerful that no one will dare to befriend your enemy nation. The true way of the hegemon is to improve one's political, economic, cultural, and military strengths, and to take the lead in all aspects, so that one does not need to fight to establish diplomatic relations with any country, nor does one need to cultivate one's own power in any country. To conclude the 9 lands chapter, a general should know how to seize strategic locations and quickly pass through locations of low strategic value, and learn to analyze the effect of different terrains on the morale of the enemy and our armies, so that he can set up battle strategies and manage morale. The state of the top army is the 3 armies as one: know how to disrupt the enemy, good at planning, proficient in the management of morale, the implementation of tactical secrecy to the home. Military action is difficult to catch the model, a campaign will shock the world, by the prestige of the king's soldiers will be able to obtain an innate advantage. 12. Fire attack. The fire attack chapter describes the principles and methods of fire attack tactics. Sun Tzu pointed out that there are 5 ways of fire attack: burning weapons, burning provisions, burning captain, burning warehouses, and burning followers. At the same time, the fire attack also takes into account factors such as timing and location. The Book of Fire Attack contains 2 main axes: one is the logic of fire attack and the other is the logic of consolidating victory. Sun Tzu classifies 5 types of fire attacks: fireman, which is to burn the enemy's camp and kill the soldiers. Fire accumulation is the burning of the enemy's accumulated equipment and provisions. The fire captain is to burn the enemy's supplies and transport. The enemy's warehouse was burned. The enemy's troops and weapons were burned. The army has to prepare the fire attack equipment so that they can carry out the fire attack at the critical moment. What is the critical moment? Must meet specific conditions. The timing of the fire depends on the weather, and the fire can only be carried out when it is dry. When the moon is passing over the 4 constellations, namely the Minis, the Pisces, the Tsushima, and the Temporalis, there is a good chance that the wind will rise, which is a good day to start a fire. The following 5 variations are worth noting. 1. The first thing you need to do is to get a good idea of what you are doing. It is not expected to burn the enemy, but to cause confusion and to take advantage of the confusion to attack before the fire is extinguished. 2. If the enemy army is very calm after the campfire, it means that the enemy is well trained and strict. Wait for a while, strengthen the fire, and attack only when there is a chance, but forget it if there is no chance. 3. Set fire outside the enemy, no need for internal support, just ignite the fire at the right time. 4. Set fire in the wind, no need for internal support, just ignite the fire at the right time. When setting fires in the upper wind, do not attack from the lower wind, but attack with the wind and strike left and right to avoid being burned by the fire. 5. The longer the wind blows during the day, the higher the chance of the wind stopping at night. In the last paragraph, Sun Tzu talked about the idea that after military victory, political victory must be the next goal. After winning a battle, if one fails to consolidate the victory and cultivate political wisdom, the number of victories will lead to the exhaustion of the people, the pride of the ruler, and the destruction of the country. It is easy to win battles, but difficult to defend them. Therefore, Sun Tzu repeatedly emphasized in the entire book of war that it is more important to pursue 1 battle than 100 battles. How to consolidate victory is a subject that a wise ruler must consider carefully and a good general must study seriously. Because anger will fade after a long time, but the country cannot recover from destruction, and people cannot be revived after death. To conclude the chapter of fire attack, the starting and setting of fire depends on the time of day, and the army should be prepared to match the fire, so that the fire attack can give full play to its tactical value. 13. The use of spies. The chapter on the use of spies explains the importance of spies and how to use them. Sun Tzu believes that the use of spies is the key to obtaining information, should be good at using the enemy and our spies to collect enemy information. He also suggests 5 types of spies: living, dead, anti, internal, and external. The theme of using spies is the use of spies to win the intelligence war. The war field is ever-changing, and the army must rely on intelligence to operate. The process of using light troops to find out what's real and what's not will give you a better understanding of the enemy, but it's still not as good as getting first-hand intelligence directly from the spies hiding on the enemy side. Use of spies answers the following questions: why should we focus on the use of spies? What kinds of spies are there? What kind of people can use spies? What kind of spies are most important? Why should we use spies? Sun Tzu's answer is simple: to find out intelligence and to reduce the cost of war. In the battlefield, those who know the situation in advance have a high chance of winning. In order to understand the situation in advance, it is not a matter of divination and asking the gods and spirits, nor is it a matter of analogical thinking, general rules, and experience, but rather, it is necessary for someone to investigate the situation on the spot, and this is where spies come into play. And on the cost side, in ancient times, 8 families a well field, when the war a family as a soldier, 7 families back up transport offerings, raising 100,000 troops. Behind the cost of 700,000 families, the cost is extremely high. The war was fought for years for the day of victory, and with such a huge daily cost, it would be most irresponsible not to spend money on spies and enemy intelligence, because the things that can be solved with money are the least expensive. If the war could be ended and won earlier by buying spies, what was saved behind the scenes was the offerings of 700,000 families for several days. Therefore, the monarch should not only spend money on his own account, but also on the accounts of all people. The goal of spending money is to eliminate some possibilities, and it is impossible to spend every penny on the edge of the sword. What kinds of spies are there? Sun Tzu has summarized the following 5 types. 1. Interlocutor, to entice the local officials of the enemy to be spies and provide valuable information. 2. Internal, the use of internal, that is, the use of the enemy's officials. Those who have made mistakes that have affected their future, those who have been punished and are resentful, those who are greedy for money and sex, those who are dissatisfied with their position, those whose talents are not used, those who want their side to fail so that they can have a chance, and those who have second thoughts can all be developed as spies. On the contrary, some insiders do not know that they are insiders, but think that they are loyal to their lord and the lord thinks that they are loyal too. For example, at the hangmen banquet, Xiangbo only wanted to be the good old man, the mediator, and did not want to harm Xiang Yu at all. But it was because of him that Liu Bei was able to escape and finally unify the Han dynasty. 3. Counter room, through the by, persuade surrender and other ways to induce the enemy spy for my use, called the counter room. The use of their own inside, must be careful to watch out for their own inside whether it becomes the opposite. 4. The dead room, pass false information to their own spies or messengers, so that he can bring to the enemy. Since they do not know that the information they have is false, it is naturally impossible to leak the information and gain the trust of the enemy. When the truth is revealed, he will be executed by the enemy, so it is called the death room. 5. The living room, send messengers to the enemy army to spy on intelligence, or have someone disguised as an enemy soldier, to go to the enemy camp to listen to the orders, and finally return to report information, called the living room. What kind of person can use a spy? Only a wise and holy man, a man of leadership, can use spies. Because any spy can be turned by the enemy, control, if you want to make good use of it, you must let him in your heart and soul, and die to follow you, convince your feelings, skills, mind, and personality, in order to fundamentally avoid being interfered with. The use of spies should pay attention to several principles. The three generals are close, but the spies are the closest. Treat their own spies to be generous, spend more money is a small amount of money, nothing more than spies need to keep secrets, but once the spy leaked information, will be severely punished for leaking spies, and people who know the secret, to attack the enemy army, must first find out who the other side's defenders, their cronies, informers, gatekeepers, officers. Close to the spies should also be able to find out the details of the spies. What kind of spies are most important? Among all the spies, the counter-spy is the most important, is the fundamental use of spies. The spy sent by the enemy must be found, bought and induced, and the emissaries sent by the enemy must be kept as long as possible and turned back for his own use. If you know the enemy's situation and who is in conflict with whom, you can use the cause and the inside. If you know which false information can have a subversive effect on the enemy, you can use the death. If you know the enemy's secrets, you can use the life. To conclude, the purpose of using the interval is to obtain information and reduce the cost of war. Only those who have leadership can use spies, and spies should be treated generously and punished severely for leaking secrets. Among the 5 types of spies, the counter-spy is the most important. No matter what kind of person you get, it is better to get the other side's people, and not only the other side's people, but also the other side's right people. The whole army has to rely on spy intelligence to decide their actions. Therefore, a wise ruler and a wise general will use people with great wisdom as spies to achieve great success. Sun Tzu emphasized that the purpose of war is to achieve victory, not to consume national power. The general should fully grasp the various factors of war and develop appropriate strategies and tactics to achieve victory quickly. The main idea of Sun Tzu's art of war is to win the battle and not to fight, that is, to achieve the purpose of war through wisdom and strategy, rather than to solve problems by force alone. Sun Tzu believed that war is a sophisticated art that requires in-depth analysis and research in order to be invincible on the battlefield. His art of war focused on strategy and tactics, emphasizing the understanding and exploitation of the enemy and how to maintain one's advantage in battle. The most famous chapter in Sun Tzu's Art of War is Sun Tzu's Art of War, the strategy, which introduces a series of strategies and tactics, such as attacking the enemy by surprise, waiting for the enemy with ease, attacking the heart, and so on. The tactics of the war, in which a series of strategies and tactics are introduced, such as attacking the unprepared, surprising the unprepared, waiting for the enemy, attacking the heart, etc. These strategies and tactics are widely used in modern business and politics, and have been cited and borrowed by many people. The art of war is a complete philosophical framework for thinking about competition, and many of the ideas provided in it for laying out strategies and formulating tactics are of high reference value in any time and space context.